Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Dr. James Taylor. Dr. Taylor, thank you for being here today.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to jump right in. You're welcome for having you. And I'm jumping right into this. I have never in my life met, as I mentioned right before we came live, I've never in my life met an American aspiring or now formerly aspiring rugby player. Take us to that. How did that happen? Then we'll get into your hustle. But I got to know more about how a guy from Minnesota ends up as an aspiring rugby player.
Well, aspiring professional. I made the rugby player part, didn't make the professional part.
Sorry, aspiring professional. Yeah, sure. Also, I was an aspiring professional NBA player too. That didn't work out for me very well.
No, oddly enough, baseball was my sport growing up. Loved it. I mean, even to this day, like just love, the old timey baseball films. Made it into in high school, and it was either 9th or 10th grade. And I was like, man, if I don't make varsity, I ain't playing ball. Well, I didn't make varsity. And so I remember I came home after it was the first time I'd been cut. All right. And in my defense, one of the guys that was ahead of me ended up playing, I think, in Kansas City's minor league system, Derek Brandt. But either way, neither here nor there.
You had him.
Didn't make the team.
I'm telling you have him. It could have been you had they not cut you.
Right.
It was Barry Bonds, but whatever, you had him.
But whatever. And a buddy of mine's like, well, hey, what are you going to do? Because it was up in Minnesota. It was a spring sport, baseball. And well, I guess kind of is everywhere. Here in Texas, it's year round. But he's like, what are you going to do since you're not playing ball? I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, shoot me, all that, high school stuff. And he's like, well, come out for rugby. Because we got a new teacher there who came in. He played rugby in the Army, came in, and he was a social studies teacher, I believe. And he started a rugby team. And I'm like, I don't know how to play it. He goes, well, don't worry about it. You get to carry the ball. I'm like, oh, okay, well, sweet. Then I'm in. So from there, brand new team in school and off and running.
So I'm going to ask you a question about that, but I just want to confirm. You parlayed that starting in high school rugby to semi-professional. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. I started playing in high school, went off to college. Again, had zero intent to play in college. And then just one day I was walking back to my dorm room and I saw a sign that said, hey, open practice for rugby out in front of the dorms. And I was like, well, shit, I got free time. And I just so happened to bring my cleats. And so I went out and started playing rugby in college and ended up coaching the team up in Wisconsin. And then that's where the aspirations, if you will, of professional rugby came into play. But man, it was 99, I believe, 99, maybe 2000 when I started playing rugby in high school. And man, it's been in my blood ever since. Went from high school to college, played some men's club stuff. And now I'm actually a chiropractor for the professional rugby team here in Dallas.
Yeah, I was going to say natural progression from rugby or football to chiropractic. I actually get that.
Of course. I
totally get that. I'm not even being sarcastic. I totally get that. Right? People go where their pain was or is. And yeah, I can't imagine that you wouldn't have loved a chiropractor on staff from 99 to 2000 and whatever. So I'm in on that. But I think that there's actually something there in your hustle. I wasn't even planning on going here, but that's what this podcast is about, is that you weren't 7, you weren't in junior leagues, you were in high school. And very, very often, high school athletes, I played basketball in high school, the people that get cut, it's over. They might play a little bit of rec league, but they don't then say, okay, this didn't work out, I'm going to pick up another sport. Not, I have a fall sport and I have a spring sport. It's I'm 15 years old and I'm going to go from, by the way, playing baseball. I just want to be clear here. Baseball, where the contact happens between a ball and a bat.
Right.
And rugby, where the contact happens between two people's heads.
Correct.
So I can't imagine your parents were thrilled with that turn of events, but that's okay. But I think that there's something there.
I can probably count on one hand the number of games my mom went to.
I would.
But this podcast isn't about parent issues, right?
That's exactly. No, but I really think that there is something there in that there are so many opportunities in life, especially for younger people, where had they just hustled a little bit more or hustled a little differently or not allowed that moment where they think that they've failed, quote unquote, to stand in their way, they would have been able to achieve something. It doesn't even have to be getting somewhere professionally, but it's finding a new passion. It's finding a new hobby. It's finding a new inspiration. And I think that that is really what keep hustling should be about, is when one door closes, it's a door that's on I just came up with this analogy. It's one of those restaurant doors that's on a swing.
Right.
It's not that one door closes, another one opens. It's simultaneously at the same time. A person doesn't realize that when one door seemingly closes, another one opens. And I think that that's super profound. But I have to ask about your upbringing and how you got from a guy from Minnesota playing hockey and rugby to being the number one rated chiropractor in Dallas. So
my folks were blue collar folks. I became a chiropractor. I'll come back around to this, but I became a chiropractor because my dad went to chiropractic school. He is not a chiropractor, but he went to chiropractic school. But yeah, just came from hardworking folks. I have memories of my mom clipping coupons on the living room floor on Sundays, stuff like that, and dad just sitting at the kitchen table in the morning, bowl of cereal in front of him, knee shaking, cigarette in his mouth as we're watching early WWF wrestling. Big Bret Hart fan, if anybody cares. And then just when I was ballpark, let's say like 6th grade, my dad had hurt himself in the Army and was kind of like literally hobbling through life. Decided to take advantage of his GI Bill finally, and went to chiropractic school. So he started doing that when I was in 6th grade. Mom kind of became the breadwinner, if you will, of the family, because dad's going to school and whatnot. We moved from St. Cloud, Minnesota to a city called St. Michael, Minnesota, which is about an hour closer towards Minneapolis. Dad finished school. And to be a chiropractor, you got to take national board exams. And the final one is a practical. So you go in, there's, set up patient experiences, if you will. And one of the things that you have to take a practical exam in is x-ray. And man, the old man couldn't read an x-ray. So he passed 1, 2, 3 and 3 of the board exams, but he couldn't pass number 4 because he couldn't read an x-ray. But in doing that, prior to even going to chiropractic school, my dad was a nurse. So while he was waiting to pass these exams, he got a job as a director of nursing at a nursing home. And in all reality, after failing the board exam a few times, he's like, man, it's going to be easier for me to continue on this nursing path than it would be for me to pass the board exam and start up an office from scratch. So he gave up on the chiropractic thing. My mom, again, just been plugging along. Both my parents are together. I've got a younger sister. But she'd been plugging along, like I said, just kind of holding down the fort, basically. And dad went back to the nursing thing, and they just, doing their 9 to 5 kind of stuff. And then when I went to undergrad, I had aspirations of being an orthopedist. I want to get in orthopedic surgery because my mom, as a hobby, did a bunch of woodwork, worked with her hands. My dad, I liked the anatomy stuff when he was going through chiropractic school. So how do I marry woodworking and anatomy?
I love power drills. I love power drills and anatomy. Yeah. Great. I'll drill screws into people's knees.
Boom. Sure. Got it. So yeah, that's why I went off. That was the aspiration again, going into college, but I was from a small town. And so I was top 10%, I think, of my graduating class. And then went off to college and all of a sudden was definitely a small fish in a big pond. And there was nobody telling me what to do. So I started drinking a whole bunch because, college in America. And turned out that did not bode well for passing classes or, just being an overall good student. So my college endeavors took a little longer than average. If anyone has seen Van Wilder, he and I were kind of one and the same.
Isn't that the hustle? Isn't that the hustle? Isn't that the hustle? Chasing the dream and finishing it?
Man, you're not wrong because I failed out of college twice.
Yeah,
and there's literally one time I had missed so many classes of this particular class. It was biology 411, plant form and function, which again I could not care less about plants. But I had missed so many classes that when it came time to show up for the final exam, I walked into Phillips Hall, which was the science building, and I remember walking through the front door and going, it's been so long since I've been here, I don't remember where the classroom is. So I missed the final because I didn't know where to go. But
I want to pivot to something. I want to get back.
That's
to
all right.
Pivot to that in a second. And that is, it's fascinating to me that the career that you ended up in is one that your father, quote unquote, failed in.
Yeah. That is not lost on me.
I think there's just one of the other things that I've learned in hosting this podcast is that I know you have 2 young children or 2 children. I don't know how young they are. I'm blessed to have 5 children. And one of the things that I've come to, 4 girls and 1 boy. But what I've come to realize is that so much of parenting, when I'm privileged to sit in the chair and interview people and ask them about their upbringing and about their hustle. And we don't even realize the impact that small things that our parents do or those that are raising us do that has on our hustle. The things that we see in our day-to-day
100%.
life. And I think that there's an interesting angle here, which I haven't yet explored with anyone. And that is the viewing a failure and not letting that deter your career aspirations when you thought about chiropractic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would say, chiropractor, not our family. The Taylors, we don't do chiropractic. My father tried it, you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean it from like a traumatic way.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating to me that you knew that, you saw that. And I'm not saying you have to become a nurse like him. That's not, you could have done anything else.
Yep.
But choosing that career is fascinating to me.
I mean, it's like I said, it's the orthopedic surgery route too. It's basically I get to work with my hands, and I get to work with anatomy. Now, am I in an OR? Am I fixing broken bones? No, absolutely not. But do I still get to do the 2 things that just really kind of lit a fire under my ass when I was a kid, like the stuff I would get excited about? Like my mom and I, we would do woodworking stuff. We do craft things, and my dad and I, we'd build the Pinewood Derby cars. But then too, like, when my dad was going to chiropractic school, like, hey, Dad, can I skip my school and go to school with you a couple days? Yeah, absolutely. And like, flipping through his anatomy books and things like just that stuff interested me. So it's,
by the way,
I understand kind of where you're headed as far as like, okay, well, maybe it didn't work for Dad or something like that. But man, it was just, these are the things I like. You know what? I gave a talk at an elementary school literally yesterday. It was like career day. And like, I asked the kids of class, I'm like, who here hates to read? And like, a good smattering of kids raise their hands. I'm like, cool. So do I. Who here really likes pictures? Some kids raise their hands like, cool. So do I. What have I done? I've memorized pictures. That's all that I've done.
But I hear what you're saying. It's just inspirational to me that you said, this is what I want to do. This is the path that I see. And prior experience, prior trauma, in the minor sense, in the very minor sense, was not going to stand in your way. We don't do advertisements on this podcast. We don't have sponsors, but I just want to say, not for you specifically. I think that chiropractors are probably the most underrated people in the medical field. I fractured 2 vertebrae in my back, or I guess if they're fracturing vertebrae, they have to be in your back, in a ski accident. And I had pain for like 10 years, chronic pain. Chiropractor did something with my ear or something. It wasn't actually my ear, but you know what I'm saying? It's also fascinating to me. You talk about the difference between orthopedic surgery and chiropractic. It's fascinating when you go to a chiropractor and they do something with your foot and it stops your headaches. Like, I think that there's something incredible about human anatomy and things like that. So there's just a little plug. If you are experiencing any sort of pain or discomfort and you've never gone to a chiropractor, I highly recommend, if you're listening to this podcast, that you find a good chiropractor. And I'm even going to put this out there and say, if you're not in the Dallas area, reach out to Dr. Taylor and he will help you find one. You see, look, I'm doing unsolicited business recommendations for you to help.
I've been doing this for 10 years and I've got a lot of names all around the country. Like if someone like, hey, I'm in Idaho. You know anyone? Yeah, I got a couple people in Idaho.
I love that. So I want to know, what has been the most challenging moment of your career so far?
In all reality, I would say it's probably about 15 months ago. So this last February, I celebrated 10 years in practice. 15 months ago, December 25th of 2022, sitting down, just got done eating, breakfast at Christmas with my family. My folks were in town. And again, here in DFW, like we don't get a whole lot of snow and ice, but the past couple of years, we've been getting covered in ice. We get done with Christmas breakfast. There's snow on the ground or a layer of ice on the ground. It had gotten real chilly here. And I turned to my wife and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go get some socks on. I'm going to go run down and just check on the office. Because I had purchased the building I'm in earlier that year. And get up, I go get some socks. I come back, I sit down on the couch and my phone is sitting there. and blanking that I'd missed a call. And I picked up the phone and I missed a call from my neighbor, Dr. Thorne. I'm like, oh, heck yeah. He's calling to wish me a Merry Christmas. I'll call him back. Pick up the phone. It rings. Without even saying hello, he goes, hey, we've got water. Crap. So Dr. Thorne, again, he's my tenant. He's a dentist. So there's lots of pipes on his side. We had burst a pipe. And I found out, again, this was about 10 a.m. Christmas Day. So I come down to the office here, and he's got a good 6 inches of water covering his whole space. And there's a dividing wall between us. So I go around, I check on my space, and I've got a good 2 inches throughout the whole thing. So the most trying time in my practicing career, because not only do I have patients to care for, but I've got employees to care for. I'm a one doctor office, so if I'm not working, they're not making money. I'm a building owner and a landlord. Okay, so now my tenant who pays me rent, well, if he can't work, he can't pay rent. But I've still got property taxes, and hell, my water bill just went up a whole bunch. It was spraying everywhere. So yeah, it was one hell of a Christmas present. Again, just about 15 months ago.
Well, the insurance agent in me, which is my primary job, says, hope your insurance people took care of you, and that wasn't. But you've rebuilt, and you're there.
True.
And you're there. And I think that when people often have something going and they, there's going to be a blip in the road. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a challenging moment. And the fact that you focused on that and said, you know what, but now I'm here and this is where I am. I think that there's a lot that we can learn about hustling through those moments on Christmas.
Yep.
And getting back on our feet, being better than ever. Obviously, I can't see the bottom of your walls in the video, but your office looks crazy and awesome. So that I think is being a business owner is getting through that. And I believe that the challenge that you face will probably help you when the next challenge arises, because we will not be challenge free.
Right, man, ain't that the truth?
To hustle through that. You work with UFC and a lot of these kind of fighter people.
Yep.
I imagine that when these athletes and fighters come to consult with you, or end up on your table, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
They are in a lot of pain, and probably in some of them in very dark places, because their career and their ability to continue chasing their dream or continuing down the path that they were on has been challenged by physical pain.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? How do you inspire them to keep going, to push through the pain? I assume you don't snap your fingers and all of a sudden they're pain-free forever. And by the way, it's not like someone who's in the fighting business is just going to be able to sit on a beach with a cocktail.
Right.
So in order for them to continue after they've told you of this pain, you have to effectively not convince them, but they want to be convinced to go back in the ring. Mm-hmm. So how do you help people hustle through that?
So there's a quote by a former chiropractor. His name is Fred Barge, and it is, "He heals most in whom most have faith." So whether it's a fighter or a father or an accountant, like fighters and rugby players, they're fun to treat because they give me variety, right? But whether it's a fighter who's coming in, who's hurting and in a dark place because he's wondering about, the longevity of his career, it's the same thing with, someone who sits at a desk 40 hours a week. If they're like, hey, I can't sit at a desk, or I can't stand up, or a plumber, like plumbers got to get into weird positions too. And like my biggest thing is even it's parents. Like I am not a pediatric chiropractor, but and again, ever since having kids, like I feel for parents, because you should spend as much time as you can playing with your kids, not just watching them play games, like interacting with them. And if you have pain that stops you from getting down on the floor, you can't be a good parent. But going back to your question, how do I help these people? How do I make them see the path, right? He heals most in whom most have faith. I have to get them to have faith in me and my ability to not only get them better, but to trust that I'm going to do it. Like, hey, this is going to take a couple of weeks, but we'll get there. I promise you based on my expertise and my experience. I know you can't see that far ahead right now because, I mean, heck, just like the flood, I'd never experienced that before. And you're right. I had a fantastic insurance agent. Shout out to Jason Ridley, if anyone is here in DFW. But I'd never done that, right? I'd never been through that thing before, so I didn't know what the path ahead looked like. A lot of these fighters or even just regular patients coming in, if they're in an immense amount of pain, they're thinking how their future is going to be affected if it stays like this, if they stay down like that. Before I can even, help them see the relief that chiropractic can offer, I have to instill the belief in them that we will be able to move forward and you will be in a better spot than where you are sitting in front of me on my exam table.
That's for sure. And I think that that is exactly the idea of inspiring others to keep hustling, is the idea that not only have I been there before, and that's the beauty of mentorship. Here it's trusted advice from a physician, right?
Yep.
Is you have to believe that I can do this, I can help you, and there will be a brighter day. So I think it's amazing because you're literally holding people's dreams in your hands.
I mean, I don't know if I'd have the balls to say it, but I'm going to say this one. You're not wrong.
I mean, again, it's not like the way I look at it, it's not like someone is coming to you because they got a paper cut. Like these people are going to hit each other and get hit. And like that, if that pain is there, some of them are crazy enough to just push through. Pain is nothing, right? Fine.
Yep.
But the one who ends up on your table, I have to believe that your hustle inspires theirs. So,
I mean, you're not wrong, and it is something that over time. One of the things that I would do, because when I was new, like if you don't have the experience, you still got the hustle, but what do you got to back it up? So I would literally be telling people, like one of my internships when I was still a student was with the former chiropractor for the Minnesota Vikings. And so when I was down here, 2, 3, 4 years in practice, people are like, okay, well, hey, Dr. Tate, like how long have you been in practice? And, if you're a new doctor, 3 years doesn't sound like it gives you very much clout. So it'd be like, oh, I've been down here in Texas for 3 years. Prior to this, I worked with the chiropractor for the Minnesota Vikings. So that makes it sound like I've got a larger breadth and depth of experience. But
salesmanship never hurt anybody.
Nope, not in the least. I mean, whether you're selling a widget or an adjustment, like
100%. I also just want to touch on the fact that I feel like we are podcast cousins because your podcast, Fueled by Spite,
yep,
probably a little more edgy, a little more, South Texas than, Northeast New York. I should be wearing a suit when I say that, suit and tie. But hustle is fueled also by those who say that I bet you can't. And so I try not to advertise or plug products, or other shows just because that's bad for my brand, but that's fine. It's fine. It's cool. I feel like we're fast friends. So I think everyone should check out your podcast. And I'm happy that the conversations are happening. One of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I thought everyone had a story to tell. And some of those are fueled by spite. Some of those are fueled by pain. Some of those are fueled by the way, I don't think that the people who had a quote unquote great upbringing deserve not to have their story told because they have a different level of hustle.
Precisely.
So I want to make sure to make note of that. We have a closing tradition on this podcast where we ask our guests to leave us with their favorite. And we already got one from you, but we're going to ask you for another one. Their favorite inspirational or motivational quote. So again, Dr. James Taylor, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for inspiring us. And the floor is yours.
I've got it on a sign that literally sits right outside my office. It's called, "You are responsible for the energy you bring into this space." People let way too many other things affect them. There's one thing. There's literally only one thing. And I say this, from a healthcare standpoint, there's only one thing you have control over, and that's what goes on up here. You can't control anything else. So you damn sure can't control your body. If you could control your body, you wouldn't need me. You wouldn't need other healthcare professionals. The only thing you could control is what goes on up here. So that's why that sign literally sits outside of my treatment room. You are responsible for the energy you bring into the space. The people that come in here and in pain, but have just a better disposition, they're happier. I get them better faster. The people that come in here in pain and their energy level is down, their vibration is down, it takes them longer to get better. It is a matter of fact.
I love that. And I think King Solomon says in Proverbs that the spirit of a man can heal his wounds. So, or heal his illness. And that's the energy. And I appreciate your energy. Again, I appreciate you being here. You've inspired me. Your energy has inspired me not to play rugby, but almost everything else I'm willing to try.
Hey man, if you're fast, you don't have to worry about much in rugby. If you ain't fast, well, You better be tough.
I'm not as fast as I used to be. Let's put it that way.
Same.
That's it. Well, this has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good, and always keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.